Hey everyone, welcome back. Today in this video I will show you how to log in automatically and reuse the login in the subsequent tests in Playwright. First of all, why do we need this? When you do end-to-end automation, you might have hundreds of tests, even thousands of tests. If you put the login script in each and every test is going to log in, and this logging in every time takes additional execution time and can cause flakiness, can sometimes cause errors. Playwright can save the login session so we don't have to log in again. So I will show you how to do this setup so you can have one test that logs in and saves the cookie, the session cookies and other login information in a file, so all your subsequent tests can use that session information and go to the main page or any page in the application without doing the login action. So for that, as I said, you need to have two tests. One test to do the login and save the cookie information, the session information, and all the rest of the test. For example, this test, that they don't have to have the login script. They can directly go to the inventory page or any page that you have in the application without having to log in. So we need to make sure the ordering is that the auth.setup or whatever you can call the name of the test that does the login. So this test needs to always run first. So tomorrow if you come and run a test, we need to make sure when you run any other test, for example this test, when you run this test, we need to make sure that it first has a dependency on this test and runs this one first before running any other tests. So how do we define this ordering? We need to go to the playwright config file, and then you might have already your projects for Chromium, Firefox, WebKit, and let's say we are going to use the Chrome browser, and we have defined the usual name Chromium, the name of the project. You can give any name and then you say use the Chrome browser. So what I have added, what you need to add, the extra information is you need to create another project named setup, and that test matches only the authentication test. So in this project it's going to run the test only that particular test that matches this name, and it is going to run that in Chrome browser. If you want to run it in other browser, you can change the name to Firefox or Safari. So here we have to define the storage state to be undefined, so that every time this test runs, the storage state is resets and it's going to start a new storage state. So there we have the setup. So you need to define a new project named setup. You can call any name, and then this project is going to run only that authentication test in Chrome browser. And when it comes to the normal project where you run all the end-to-end tests, you need to add a dependency line here. What this means is that when I run any test, this test has a dependency on the setup project. What this means is, suppose let's say you're going to run one of the tests, let's say this test. So this test is part of the Chromium project. So when I say npx playwright test in the project Chromium, it's going to run all the tests, but when it runs, it will see this dependencies defined here, and here we have the dependency for this Chromium project has a dependency on the setup project. And what is our setup project? Setup project is nothing but the test, the one test, the authentication test that logs in and saves the cookie information. So that is our only test that is in this setup project. So when you run any of your end-to-end tests, you might have hundreds of tests, or you want to run a specific test like this one. What Playwright is going to do is it's going to look into this configuration and it's going to see, hey, I have a dependency on this setup project, so let me run that setup project first. So this makes sense because we need to run this setup project. In other words, we need to run the authentication step, the test, which first logs in and saves the cookie information. Once we save the cookie information, then you can run other tests, because your other test doesn't have that login information. It is simply going to go to whatever page you have inside your application. So the authentication test is going to always run first. So we are, as we have seen before, so it's going to go to the website. Here's the sourcedemo.com. It's going to log in successfully, and once it logs in, it is going to store the cookie information in this file, and then the actual test. Let's say these are the other end-to-end tests that you have, which seamlessly go to the other pages. They don't do the login again. So this saves a lot of login time and makes the script simple, and it avoids the flakiness and all the other situations which might result in test failures. So this is very clean. So it doesn't do the login here. So for example, I have only one test here. So let me show you how this works. So I'm going to run the npx playwright test with the -- project equal chromium. So it is going to pick this project, and you can see there is a dependency, so it's going to run this first. So let's see this in action. So it says running 2 tests using 1 worker. And let me pull the browser from the other screen. So you have the Playwright inspector here, and you can see, although we have the end-to-end test, it picked the auth.setup tests first. So you can see here the auth.setup.ts, the file, and you can see this test has been picked up because we have defined the dependency which says always run the setup project, and that matches this only test. So the auth.setup runs first. It goes to the home page, which is a demo site, and then before I do this, let me delete this cookie file that I already have, so you can see the file created again. So let's go back and enter the username, password. So we are going to log in, and the login is successful. You can see all the products. So we do a check there to make sure the login is successful, and then we close the browser. So if I go back to my Visual Studio Code, you can see the user.json file is created, and it has all the cookie information. You don't need to worry about all these things. This might seem too technical, but it basically has the expiration date, what is the domain name, and all the information. And the browser was closed in the auth.setup because that's how I have configured that. So it closed the browser, and it opened the other subsequent tests. So you can see here the subsequent test, for example, the test.spec.ts, which is the other test. This might be your other test, one of the 100 tests you have, but this is one test that it has picked up, and what this is going to run. So that order is correct. So we have the cookie information stored. Now we are ready to execute other tests that doesn't have the login. So you can see here this test doesn't have the login steps, so it's directly going to the inventory page, which is the products page. Only an authenticated or a logged user can see this page. But now we are going to, since we have already logged in and captured the session information, when I say the product page, it's directly going to the product page, and we have not logged in. How did this happen? Because we had the cookie information stored, and we have asked our test to use that cookie, that saved session information. Playwright is using that saved session information. It is going to do all the work for you. You don't need to know what is happening in the background, but it used that session information, saved session, and somehow injected that into the browser, and when we went to the products page, we saw the products page. and that's how it works. So this makes it all simple. So you have saved literally 5 to 6 lines of code where you enter the username and password and clicking the login button again and again in each and every test. So here you directly go to the home page or whichever page inside the logged in application, and then here we are going to see, and this also proves another way that we see the logout button. That means the application was logged in automatically and we have logged out, and we are checking the login button is there, and that's it. So that is how you do the ordering. So you have one file for logging in and saving the information of the session, and then all the rest of your test can use that saved session, and so your tests are more faster and you have less login errors, and it is easy to reuse the session in many tests. And you don't have to do this in each test. You don't have to put test.use. You can do a global configuration. If you go to the top here, you see the shared settings for all projects. So here you can even put the other configuration. Just to say this is a shared setting. This applies to all the projects, the setup project, Chromium project, all your projects. So this is a central. You can either put it in each test. You might want to use this storage session only in a certain test. In that case, you can configure in that particular test. If you want to use this logged session in all the subsequent tests, you can put that in the shared settings. So that way you don't need to add this line in each and every test. You can have that in one global setting, which is the shared setting for all of your projects. So all your tests will use the storage state. So how to use that is you have to go to this shared settings block, and then you say the add this line where you say the headless is true, and you simply add another line that says storage state, and then give the path of the file, the JSON file, or you can name it into any file, or whichever file you name. You give the path of the file where the session or the cookie information is stored, and that's it. All of your tests will now log in using that saved session, and you will see the tests running successfully. So less login errors and less flakiness, and it is easy to reuse this session in many tests, and it also works on different browsers. You can test it in other browsers such as Chrome, Firefox. It works in the same manner, so no need to add any special thing. This same code, same setup will work for all browsers. Thank you for watching. If you find this video useful, please click the like button, subscribe for more videos like this, and I will see you in the next video. Happy testing.